whispers tearing lives, hearts raw scarred. Judges grinning, deals in shadows locked. Case workers speaking truth they've mocked. Gunning on for justice, rage intense, bringing kids home from this broken fence. Corruption weighs heavy, laws collapse. Kids go missing behind their maps. CPS stealing kids, no trace. Lies build walls, the truth they erase. Gunners howl, cuts through the air. He won't stop midnight, he'll get there. Dark hallways where the guilty play. Secrets hiding, hope fades away. A man with fire, voice like a storm. Breaking chains, reform, transform. Gunning on for justice, rage intense. Bringing kids home from this broken fence. Corruption weighs heavy, laws collapse. Kids go missing behind their maps. Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days, cut through the lies, light ablaze. Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days, cut through the lies, light ablaze. Behind their maps.
Hey look, this for every mama got her baby snatched on some bogus shit. For every pops they locked out the crib like he ain't blood. CPS, y'all been eating on pain for too long. We know what you on, but now it's war, this gunning foe. CPS. Kick doors, no warrants, they taking our seeds. Say it's neglect, but they planting they greed. Feds in they pocket, judge got a fee. Run it like a business, adoption spree. Contracts overseas, got partners in France. But shorty from Shy, he ain't get a chance. Mama work 2 jobs, daddy do right, but they still snatch his baby in the middle of the night. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's Suffer Davis popping and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruined good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They labeled us monsters, called us unfit, but it's they paperwork dirty, all of it forged and flipped. How the fuck they selling babies to a bidder overseas? Then tell the fam you unworthy. Man, please, we got mamas in pain, daddies in tears. They breaking our hearts, been doing it for years. Now we riding with Gunner, and we got the proof. Sworn sworn under oath. Now it's time for truth. Trump got the team and the pen in his hand. He said bring them home. Now that's the plan. You feds been hiding, but it's over now. We moving like an army, and we ain't bowing down. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's affidavits popping and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruined good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They ain't gods, they ain't law, they just people. Corrupt people. And when the people rise, ain't no system safe. The Chi-Town, it's the movement. We gunning for CPS, and we coming heavy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wait.
Good evening, another Sunday edition of Gunning for CPS. I'm your host, Gunner. Welcome to the show. As we start things off here, usually we try to keep you up on some of the news that's happening around the country as well as across the world. There's several different events that are happening in England, Ireland, Scotland, so on and so forth, that we're seeing a lot of the child trafficking, a lot of the exposure of the deep state, the corporation, as beginning to fall, and we're seeing things every day, even though we don't see all of it in major media news, such as those major news outlets. That's what shows like this, is able to take and do, is to give you that news that maybe you've missed, you lost along the way, and how it's important to you and I, and what it means about the kids coming home. Now, yes, we've had several people that have turned in their affidavits, gotten their letters, used those letters as exhibits, as well as their own personal affidavits, in their own federal civil rights case. They have filed a TRO, which is a temporary restraining order. That is the beginning stages, which will then, within 7 to 14 days, that takes, and you will have basically a hearing for a federal injunction hearing. In other words, to make this permanent up to the trial, and then you can ask after the trial to have that continued for that particular thing, because even afterwards it is still considered a form of retaliation. So you guys are getting some of this knowledge, doing some of your research, you're getting there, but remember, there's a lot of things that go into that we want to point out too with your TROs. Your TROs is you have to make sure that you're articulating within that TRO or your motion for a TRO of why you're wanting that TRO, what you're demanding in that TRO, such as, not so much the return of your kids, but to nullify any orders or any restrictions from there, and the return of your kids type thing, would be more of a clarity and why it should be so much. And you got to make sure it's not just turning in a TRO, it's saying, Your Honor, a lot of people have used Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution that specifically says any case where it involves any representative of the state or the state itself is a party in the case, that under the constitutional law, under the Constitution itself, specifically says that when that arises where the state or anybody that's working for the state, so on and so forth, that state, that case then originates in the federal court or the Supreme Court. In other words, it eliminates the bias is the reason for that. And as you'll see, Sharon's popping in here. We're just doing some stuff. She's in town for a little bit, just hanging out. But a lot of people are doing this with their TROs, which is what is getting their children back. Now, a lot of people say, well, let's see the thing of the children. Listen, these people have now began their own federal case. We have got to respect that, as well as dealing with their own family dynamics now of their children returning home. We have to respect that. It's not about you and I. And I've made that very abundantly clear to those that they have reached out, say, hey, we've got our kid or our kids back. We're moving forward in our case. Our case was accepted. The TRO was accepted, so on and so forth. So all of these things go into play that you're going to have to take in. And remember, when you file, you have got to articulate it specifically. We've got a couple little bit different news for you. Now, this happened this week in Congress. I'm going to share. We're going to share with you guys. Um, Here we go. And check this video out.
According to my research, which will very soon be revealed next week, they've rescued so far 35,000 tender age kids. How you like that? Now, according to Ms. Hopper's research, which I find fascinating, and everybody up here should, 70% of the documentation turned in by so-called sponsors, which were lined up by who? The NGOs. Through who? Primarily HHS. It was a pipeline, man. We fed a pipeline of tender age children into sex trafficking and slave labor into our country. We're finding these kids. We're tracking this fraudulent documents. You're right, Ms. Hopper. My research showed a little bit less, 65%. You said 70%. I'll go with 70. So be advised. Be advised. We are building out case files, criminal case files. We're interviewing these 35,000 kids, and we're finding out exactly what the hell happened, how they ended up in the nightmare where they were, and we're rescuing more. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. We're going to identify these children, we're locating these children, we're rescuing these children, and we're building out criminal files based upon the testimony of these young teenagers and the documentation of fraudulent vetting. And many of these NGO employees are going to find themselves wearing orange, be their new favorite color. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the indulgence. I yield.
So, guys, if you'll notice within that clip, they are aware of what's going on, and there are investigations going on. And this is not just whatever says, is it, are you talking about undocumented? This is everything. How did you get into the system? How were you taken from this and this and that? And they're talking about the NGOs they're talking about are the contractors and subcontractors for these states, all 50 states, that they're now gathering this stuff because they weren't supposed to be there, and how there was no follow-up and none of this other stuff. But they're fully aware of what's going on. And a lot of the stuff that we've turned over and stuff, they're running down the holes and pointing them in the direction. And they're watching our shows. And they're paying attention to the stuff of what we're sharing in here. And it's going across the nation. It's getting the attention of people to where, wait a minute, this is going, hey, as this guy, hey, have you heard about this? Have you heard that? And a lot of people say, well, what about this big thing that's going on in Washington, D.C.? Yeah, they're fully aware. I've talked to the lobbyist that's actually working on some of those bills and so on and so forth that are through there. They are aware of what we have going on. So everybody's paying attention, waiting for things to go. And I know towards the beginning of the show, you guys have said something, hey, we've had a long week in this. Yes, we have a long week ahead. Why? Because this week we're going to work on modifying our filing from its original file. In other words, we put together its original case, and now we have to modify it after everything else is done. And we're just, there's a lot of work that's going to go in. This is now going to get filed. This is going to get filed. Those things take time, as well as some emergency stuff that's going to go in there. Now, there's the difference. If you feel your child's in imminent danger or anything like that, that would be something that would qualify you to file a emergency TRO in a hearing, but you better have your evidence instead of saying, hearsay. You're going to have something solid to prove to the judge in the courtroom for that particular thing. So let's go on that. There's another thing that's coming out too. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but we're going to share this. If you guys haven't heard about this, it's a new movie that's coming out. It's called The War on Children. And we want to play the promo one. We're not getting paid or anything else or compensated to do this. We're promoting it because it is a good movie too, from the previews and everything else go on there. That gives you a ton of information of what's actually going on. And like we've said here on the Tiff and Punisher show, on the Late Show, so on and so forth, and other shows, we are peeling the onion back. Because if you guys actually, if this country realized how bad of shape we were in, we wouldn't be able to handle the transition that quick. And this is a process. And everybody says, "Well, what about CBS? They're not doing this. They're not doing this." Right? They're working on it, but this does take time. But they've had to peel back the layers, and then it does no good if the courts are corrupt, even at the federal level. Which, as you guys have seen, they are cleaning up those federal courts, and really laying down the groundwork to where they're establishing that judges and the other branch of government, judicial branch of government, does not run this country. The executive branch does, and they have that full discretion, and that has been ruled on. Which a lot of us that understand Constitution and constitutional law, we already knew that because the Constitution was very clear. And whether they like it or not, you just can't. But let me show you this. Bring this up here. This video here on this movie preview, and this is one you guys want to follow up. This is like the Sound of Freedom, but this gives you a little bit more history and a few other things. But let's watch the video together. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Hold on one second. We're having a. Let me change the technical thing on this. Let's bring this up. Let's see if this works. There we go.
Intentionally sexualizing our children and stealing their innocence.
I think that's right.
TikTok specifically is designed to target young people. That's who their audience is.
Have children died because of social media?
Absolutely.
Have they been trafficked off of social media?
100%.
Have they been sexually exploited off of social media?
Ongoing. Yes.
I'm scrolling on TikTok. I see little kids with TikTok. What are they looking at?
This is what you don't want kids to see, is that correct?
Exactly.
And again, this is depicting children. This is supposed to be kids.
Well, honestly, I didn't even know that transition from female to male was an option until I was on social media and began being exposed to those type of communities.
You've never seen a 18-month-old masturbating?
No, I haven't. Have you seen any sexually explicit drag shows marketed as all ages for kids that you would denounce or think that are a problem and that you want to distance yourself from?
No.
You know this is wrong.
So, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to end the interview.
They use the word sexualize kids at a young age, or, I mean, give me a break.
It just seems like there's no moral, construct at all.
Are kids facing just the absolute worst onslaught of grooming that we've ever seen?
Yes, the entertainment industry is sexualizing children for an agenda.
Your daughter was secretly transitioned at school.
This policy has to do with children as young as 5 all the way through high school.
Penthouse footed the bill to lobby before state boards of education. Yes, Penthouse and Playboy. The history behind this is far darker than most Americans understand.
You think the big tech companies at this point are essentially aiding and abetting human traffickers and people who are working to exploit children?
Absolutely.
If you don't want to hear it in a school board meeting, why should children be able to check it out of the school system?
There is misinformation presented that somehow that we're doing surgery on minors or even children, and that simply is not true.
How old were you when they gave you a double mastectomy?
It was a month after my 13th birthday.
Ultimately, we're going to talk about, are they going to give, the counselor's going to give them medication there at school without their parents' permission? I mean, I think we're leading towards an absurd and horrific time.
Well, first of all, we weren't forewarned we would be sharing a locker. We had no idea. I turned around, a 6'4", 22-year-old man, fully intact with an exposing male genitalia.
This ideology is killing our kid.
Do you think more people need to speak up to protect kids like your daughter?
Yes, I do.
Well, I think from heaven she can see how hard you fought for her.
Do you feel like this is a war on children?
I know it's a war on children. But, like they said, we're coming for your kids.
Yeah.
And they have.
Can I ask the cameras to get turned off for just a second? I just want to have a real conversation.
Wow. So that's available now. You guys go check that out, and it's going to educate you a lot of a lot of information of what's actually going on and how they're going through. And yes, John, this is a spinoff as for MK Ultra worldwide. It's very well done. We've also noticed that a lot of music industry, a lot of movies, and everything else that we're coming to find out is a spinoff of that, including a lot of well-known, very publicized artists that have promoted this agenda and this ideology. And like I said, it's about control, it's about manipulation, it's about what you're going to allow and what you're not. It's about testing. But once again, then you wonder why, being raised in homeschool, my children went through homeschool, but then she does hers, or not in homeschool, but in public school. Sorry, backwards there. And then hers in homeschool, and she was done in homeschool. Why that level of, yes, that's the way we should go back to. And the other thing is the results too. That the amount of children that are homeschooled that are able to read and write and comprehend and do all these other things that they're able to do is something like 98%. Do you know what the percentage of children in public school are able to do? I believe the latest statistics was like 37%. We are failing. Public education is failing. It is useless.
On purpose.
And the money that's involved, they get up to, I think the recent number, and I'm going to just shoot off the top of my head from what I'm remembering too. You guys can check the Facebook post because I believe we posted that too. Is they're getting $17,000 per child per year, and the average cost to homeschool is actually under $200. Why?
Not per year.
Well, hold on. That's with the materials and everything, the books and this and this and that. That's what they're getting. Now that has changed within some of this thing with the voucher program and some of these other things to where they're giving, a lot of these different things that are going on out there. But we're seeing that the public education system is the thing that's failing. If you'll notice in those videos, where are kids getting exposed to all this stuff? Where are they open to? Now, being here in Blount County, Tennessee, you guys will also notice, where's it happening? Because here in Blount County, Tennessee, it's been exposed, especially lately here in the past 6-8 months. It's in our school systems.
Yeah.
And now we're finding out it's not just school systems, it's law enforcement that is doing this stuff. And it is just hitting the news, and and here's the reason why. Because of people like you and people like me that are now no longer quiet about the corruption and the things that are going on behind closed doors and behind religious organizations and foster homes and everything else that's going on. I mean, I think there was what was that one that we had earlier, that there was a woman that was caught selling her minor children for sex to somebody that got caught. I forgot what state it is, but you guys see it. It's all up on the internet.
I think it was in Alabama. There were
Alabama,
3 men that were arrested. Somebody shared this with me today. 3 men were arrested because the parents were selling the children, but the person pointed out that they're being awfully quiet about who the parents are, and they think it's possible they were actually
foster parents.
Don't know that for sure, so don't quote me on that, but there is a possibility. No matter what, it's disgusting.
But but who's doing that? And the stuff in that show, if you go watch that show, who's proposing this stuff? It's your public school systems, and then who's always there with it or taking children away if they don't agree with it? CPS. And they are violating your family's rights, including their child's rights, because that's why if you're under 18, you're a minor, they don't have a decision to do anything else without the parents' consent. By 18, they should be informed enough, but once again, the public education system is not educating them on their rights, which is why one of those things that takes and goes on. Well, and James, I'm gonna, we'll deal with that here at home. James is saying here, here in Blount County, why are people so blind to the problem? Why? because it's one of several things that I've done an investigation on. One, they're either connected or related to people that are actively involved in government school systems, and that was revealed in the one with the one that was related to the school board member that was happening in a school. In other words, there was a relationship there, or like I said, to expose that stuff also exposes them to massive lawsuits. And if you're talking kids that are in a school that this teacher has contacts with, thousands and tens of thousands of children, that's multiple lawsuits, and it would bankrupt them. So they're protecting the financial investment they're getting, as well as government money and investigation. These are the things that they're trying to protect, and why they're not blind to it. They choose to be, because it affects their livelihood and everybody else around. Because if you start questioning one teacher in a school system, you're going to question every teacher, and then that brings doubt upon the public education system, and so on and so forth.
There's a lot of people still with their head in the sand too, because it either hasn't touched them or they think it hasn't touched them yet. And so they have no reason to look into it. And then some of us come up on them and start talking, and we sound crazy. So
But
there's also that.
But you got to remember too, with some of these people that are involved, especially in in the judicial system, so on and so forth, some of these judges and magistrates have children. So the first thing that, there's even some that, and we'll get into that too, because I'm not going to go into any particulars, but their kids will turn around and tell people, I'm not going to get in trouble because my mom or dad is a judge or a magistrate or part of the police department or the sheriff's department or this, that, and they will cover it up, and they have. There's even times, that's been documented not only here but abroad, of covering up murders, for just other criminal activity and this and that. Why? Because they have that position of authority, and they're abusing that position of authority. This is why the Constitution itself only allows for a duly elected sheriff and deputies. All these police belong to the city, and they enforce things that are commercial code. They're not even supposed to be interacting with us unless we've done something unconstitutional. All these other things, it's completely unconstitutional. And if you knew all this stuff, your traffic tickets, your infractions, your this or that, and you understood how you've been swindled into this system, because you'll even go back and say, because they'll say, well, you signed up for this, and well, I didn't knowingly contract, and under both state and federal contract laws, you have to know and have a full disclosure of all of it and what it means, and it's never in there. Your marriage license, your birth certificate, your social security, that you don't even have to have those things. If you don't believe me, go look at the Amish. Go look at any tribe of the American, we'll call them Aborigines, if you will, originals that were here, of the different tribes of the Native Americans.
Well, if you think about it, it's awfully silly to think that a piece of paper is going to make any difference in your life whatsoever.
Well, and that's where it goes down to, and let's go down to this here, and this would save a lot of people things. And they said, well, my state doesn't acknowledge common law marriage or common law anything. Well, one right there is a big red flag, because the Constitution itself is common law. So that tells you, if they're not going to acknowledge common law things, that's our big red flag. Well, then you don't follow the Constitution. Therefore, you're an ineffective and nullified court, which basically is what it says. Even your civil courts are supposed to be common law courts according to the Constitution. But when you go into these places, they'll turn around and say, we only are able to do statutes and codes when you go into the state courts, because they're not supposed to be dealing with you and I. And the idea of the civil thing is, because you have a civil contract when you get married, that the idea is, if you can't come to a realization to meet the requirements of the law, which is 50% of your debt and or profit during the time you've been together, and anything you had before the gathering was considered your own. Now, as far as the children, it is supposed to be 100% 50-50. You're dividing, And there was no concept until the state got involved of child support. That was to take in, help, or to have deadbeats, people that didn't want to be involved. But now you've got attorneys that are saying, especially, and this is the truth according to the statistics and research we've done, that especially on the side of women, saying use CPS against your husband and we'll get you more child support and we'll get you more time. And they are weaponizing this, and this is just so bad for the children. Because whether you two are angry or not, those children are a part of you and the other person, and you both need to grow the hell up, whether you like what I'm saying or not, and come to a conclusion to divide and go about your own separate ways. That does not mean you take in, and the idea is you both then work, you both then do your own separate lives, and you both have the kids half of the time. Does that mean that same lifestyle has to be maintained? Absolutely not. But once again, who created no contest or no fault divorces? The states, because it made them more profit. It made you work less. It made you lazy, is what it came down to. And they're making a profit off of manipulating you, is what it comes down to. And you have people that turn around, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll just get divorced. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And in a lot of poison and toxic teachings by, my parents, well, if this is, and like I said, I've seen it myself, from those things of the amount of toxicity that mothers can do to their daughters is disgusting. And very, very bad. And yes, it also goes for fathers that do this. But once again, there's a choice you have to make with it, even no matter how you grew up or what you've been through. As you become an adult and 18 and accountable for your own actions, is you have a choice to make. I can choose not to do that, find every method and methodology not to go down that road and avoid it like the plague. But once again, that takes being an adult.
Accountability and responsibility.
Let alone how many of you were taught, and we've dealt with this several times, circles.
Yes.
And boundaries. Mm-hmm. Where we were able to tell somebody no. Instead it was, you're just do what you're told. You'll always need your mother or father, those type of things.
I hope
that's
not.
Toxic. Because here is the ultimate reality of things. Eventually we all will die and pass away. That is an absolute fact. Even though people are thinking things with consciousness and all this other into AIs,
I'll never get out of here alive. I'm sorry.
No. But the point is to give your children enough skills for when you're gone that they can cope with this evil thing called the world that they deal with and keep it out of their homes and their houses. But once again, that's where CPS is crossing the line nationwide by saying they have the right to come into your home and to do these things and coerce that. That is a criminal act. Yeah, it's a criminal act, but they're not going to tell you that. Why? Because it makes them money. Coerce. You guys have seen the videos that I've shown you, and the ones Sharon has publicized on here. I've shared on my channel, and she has on TikTok, and they're going viral because it's calling them out. You don't have a right. Where's your warrant? Where's your court order? You can't. And to realize this, now you throw the thing like you guys have out there. They're done. I'm a federal witness, and here's my case, or here's my letter. I basically turn around. I dare you, because you know what the punishment for the crime is for federal witness tampering? Up to 20 years in a federal prison. There's no this or that. It's once it's investigated and it's confirmed and everything else, you're going to jail. There's no if, and, or go. They're going to pick you up. They're going to put cuffs on you. It doesn't matter if it's a cop, deputy, or anything else. They will hand over your stuff and put you in handcuffs and take you off to jail, federal jail, to be before a federal judge on criminal charges. And when you have them on video committing these crimes, there's your evidence. But you guys have got to be vigilant. Use that stuff as evidence in your case, because when these judges see this stuff, they're going to go, oh, no. but you got to be able to make the argument and articulate it to say, Your Honor, it's well established within federal case law and the Constitution that questioning somebody of what the Fourth Amendment is, it's all protected. It even says in the Fourth Amendment, persons in the home. You can't come in. You can't seize. You can't this. You can't that. And imminent danger, you must prove that, and it must meet the federal definition of imminent danger. In other words, if you don't intercede of imminent danger, somebody's going to die or get or get permanently injured, unless they can prove that, and not just by their words. Well, I saw this. Where's your body cam footage? That's hearsay. So you guys got to know how to articulate. This is stuff you should have learned in public education that they didn't tell you, and they will cross the line. You guys have seen on the videos. Even turn around, and as soon as you tell them, they can have, yes, unless you have something posted like I've shown you in the others or on my Facebook page, that's considered a public notice. They can't even knock. They can't do nothing. But once you tell them, I'm sorry, you need to leave, and or you communicate, we're not doing this, and I'm pleading the fifth, and unless you have a warrant or court order, go away, and they continue to proceed, that's when they break the law. Because then you're questioning somebody on private property. And if you've informed CPS to go away, to stand up for your rights, and they have brought in law enforcement, that is aiding and abetting, that is conspiracy to the deprivation of rights, because then they are using a show of force or anything. Why? Because they are not supposed to show up unless a crime has been committed. Where's the crime? You got a crime? Have you got probable cause? What's your, and this goes for your and we covered this before, within your vehicle, within your hotel room and everything else. Reasonable articulated suspicion. Okay, now you have a suspicion. Now that you're doing some investigating, what's your reasonable articulated fact? In other words, the thing you're going to go to the judge and turn around and say, I have done this and this and that. That's what they have to sign, that they haven't had a firsthand experience seeing this, not hearsay, not admissible. It's not legal. And understanding what a warrant looks like and a court order looks like. You know, I've gotten sent stuff before on stuff where it just had the judge's signature, and they tried to coerce their way in all sorts of other things on several different occasions with a couple different things and a couple different matters. It's not a legal document. What do you mean it's not a legal document? That has to be, one, signed by the judge. Yes. Not auto pen. Where's the original? You have to give me the original with the right ink, not a photo stack or anything else, because of the auto pen, blue ink. There you go. Then it has to be stamped by the court clerk, and then it has to be signed by the court clerk. And if those signatures look the same, if they've been signed by the same person, it has been known that court clerks have forged judges' things. Nobody can sign their name but them. It has to be an in-person signature. But you got to make sure they have jurisdiction to even sign the warrant, because it has to be an Article 3 judge, specifically done, or an Article 1, specifically given permission by Congress of the United States of America to sign that. I know a lot of you guys, well, my family court judge signed, they're not even legally able to sign any of that shit.
Don't y'all love the games they play?
It's illegal. And as soon as you bring it into a courtroom and you know to ask the questions, well, who signed this? Well, so-and-so signed this. And then you ask them, do you have special permission from Congress? These are questions to ask when you get to the right place of, did Congress give you special permission to do this? Because you're only an Article 1 judge. You're not an Article 3 judge that specifically deals with constitutional rights and everything else. Once again, and here's the other thing, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2. It's me versus the state type of situation. You don't have jurisdiction, so you can't issue the warrant or the court order to enter, because it's a conflict of interest, and you don't even have jurisdiction to sign the court order or warrant. You have to go before a federal judge. But they're not doing that, are they? But you're not going to know that until you catch them and you're educated and you have the knowledge and you know when and where to do it. And then you trap them in the corner, because once you have them trapped, you've exposed them. And then it costs them everything. Everything. So we're going to continue on as we've been going through in this series. We're going to transition a little bit here now that we've got you guys up to date, kind of caught up. We're going to get touch back in. We were hoping Darren was going to join us this evening. I think he's got some other things he's working on. But we're going to pick back up on your constitutional rights. We're going through the amendments and giving you some real-time examples, what it means, what it means psychologically, mentally, why these rights are put in place, and why these are inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. And once again, you're going through these things, and the same thing with being able to see your accuser. Forensic interviews are not admissible in court unless they have substantiated other evidence proving that it is to verify what is being said. If not, it's not even admissible in court. The other thing is you have the right on the other side, and or your attorney has to have the right to cross-examine under the law. Otherwise, that's a due process violation. So any of you guys have dealt with forensic interviews, you can go back and now challenge those things if you want, not only in your federal case, but now you can go back on your state case and say, hey, you violated this stuff, and here's the ruling from the federal court, and it's squashed anyway. And they can't overturn that ruling because they don't have the authority, because the federal courts have a higher authority and they must follow those rulings and then appropriate it. But once again, the TROs and stuff like that and the federal injunctions will take away a lot of that anyway. But that's your follow-up after you win your federal cases to file back in your state under appeals, because it's new evidence because of a new ruling in a federal case, and get your record completely expunged unless you ask the federal court judge to expunge those things, remove those things, and you have to do that in a motion in the close or anything else before the judge signs off on everything. You would submit that as they're getting ready to do some of the ruling and so on and so forth. So, but let's go on. We're going to deal with, we left off last week with the 7th Amendment. This week we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're going to move right into the 8th Amendment.
Did we do this?
Yeah, we did the 7th. Okay, excessive fines, cruel and unusual punish. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed. In other words, you're innocent until proven guilty. They can't remand you with a bail amount or deny you bail just because of hearsay or this, that, unless the evidence is so overwhelming as the rule of thumb that it perpetuates that you are a danger to the community through this. So these judges doing excessive bails or a no bail hearing and being able to do these things, saying, hey, we know you're going to do this, but you got to have a pattern of it. In other words, there has to be something established. So if you've never had a case before or anything like that, yeah, that's cruel and excessive. Nor excessive fines. In other words, Your Honor, these fines are just unbelievable. Now, understand, this is because you get due process. In other words, contempt of court, all these other things through here. And understand this, that you can't be in prison. A lot of people are going to prison or having other things taken away from them, which is getting reversed because of a lot of filings, like a license taken away from, driver's license, to where that's excessive because I can't afford to pay. Now I can't transport myself to even get to work. That's cruel and unusual punishments, and that's excessive. That's an excessive rule. There's even people going to jail because they haven't paid child support or paid, court fines or anything else, through their, once again, that's called debtor's prison, and that's illegal as hell, just so you guys know. But once again, you're not going to win shit in a state court, because if it's a constitutional or a federal issue, you're arguing in the wrong court. Let's go on. Nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Now, is it separating you from your family psychologically or destroying your family? Isn't that considered cruel and unusual to all involved when there's nothing there and violated constitutional rights? And yes,
especially to children.
Especially to children. Children have constitutional rights. Yeah, even though they don't want to do that. The protector of those rights are the parents.
Yes.
But when the parents are ignorant of their constitutional rights, how can they protect the children? But who has failed? The public education system. Once again, we're going to go back and put the blame. We're going to hold accountability for every bit of it. Now, a cruel and unusual punishment. You can claim this, like I said, your child's been abused while in the case of foster care. That is cruel and unusual punishment.
Absolutely.
Now, when you deal with your children cannot be represented in a federal case without a federally licensed attorney. Okay? That is one thing that they will tell you right away. You cannot put your children on that. It has to be the adults and through this and go from that perspective, unless you decide you want to go pro se sui juris. You have that conversation and you find somebody that has a federal license that's willing to represent the children on this behalf. And basically, that's the only way that they can take and to go through their cruel and unusual punishment is also a financial burden. It can be. In other words, hey, they basically run me into bankruptcy. Hey, they destroyed my business, my life, anything that I had in my company. That is cruel and unusual. Why? Because the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Because, especially for some of the things that they've been doing. So let's see here. Let's go back. As you were saying, the Seventh Amendment. Yeah, that was the trial by jury and civil lawsuits. Now let's go back to that one because I want you guys to catch this. In suits, they're talking about jury trials and civil things at common law. In other words, your civil courts are supposed to be a common law court, but they're not, which is why they're not supposed to be dealing with the people. These are things, interaction when it comes to the Constitution is between we, the people, and the court system. It's supposed to be a common law court. It's supposed to be a federal court. That's why we said Article 3, Section 2, Clause 2. That's why it's supposed to be in federal court. It's not even supposed to be in state court. But this is dealing with contracts, things that exceed $20. That's why they're talking about including a right to a trial by jury shall be preserved. So even when they do family court and do the crap they do with their kids, right here, it's a violation of the Seventh Amendment because it says I'm supposed to have a trial by jury. It says right in here. Why? Because there's a value to your children. If you don't believe me, look up the things that we've been trying to show you on Facebook and this and that when it talks about the different bonds. Malibu Dallas has done a great book on bonds, and there's a couple other people that are on these bonds where they're making money off of keeping you in court. Mm-hmm. Literally, the more money they make.
Now, technically, okay, this is a question. Technically, if the states have all signed up under the Constitution, then they should be upholding the Constitution in the state.
Well, that goes under their oath.
So they should be.
Yeah. See, everybody takes an oath. The sheriff's department takes an oath to up and defend. So when you go through, like one of the things that we'll do in our case is those that have an oath, they're going to repeat their oath on the record.
Right.
So you make sure that you put that on the record. Hey, state your name and your position and a brief description of your job. Now, will you please give me your oath? Now, you guys can go and do that to where you can get their signed oath and enter that as evidence, as we will be doing. But once again, that oath means that's of highest regard. In other words, no matter what happens, they have to uphold that oath.
So technically, there's not even an excuse the state has to not be upholding the Constitution because.
Well, wait a minute.
Right?
Here it comes right here. Non-enumerated rights retained by the people. The next amendment deals with that. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. In other words, we the people must have those rights.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's a Ninth Amendment violation for you guys that are paying attention and working on your case and understanding how this is. So a lot of the show with the affidavit saying, well, what rights were violated? And you guys hit all the high spots, but you're missing so much.
Rose, if your lawyer is talking out of a trial by jury, you may want to look into ineffective counsel. I'm just going to say it because everybody has a right to trial by jury.
Yeah.
That's literally listed in your
You have to, and you can quote the amendment right there. Your Honor, under this amendment, I have a right to a trial by jury. It doesn't matter. And once again, Of course, the lawyer is going to do this. Why? We've had that conversation if you watch some of the other shows before. Why? Because a lot of these judges and magistrates sit on the bar association, the state bar association, under the council to judge all the lawyers and some of the other judges. Depends on where they're at. If they're in the higher courts in the state, they're going to take and do all the other judges from the district, the local judges and everything else. We have that in our case, where we have a judge that actually sits on the bar thing for ethics, believe it or not. Yeah, what a joke for other attorneys. And that goes before she sits on that council. It's a conflict of interest. This is why the Bar Association, you hear so many people preach over and over again. This is why you don't want a lawyer, and you need to educate yourself, and you're hoping just paying this money gets the stuff. But not everybody's like that. Why? Because if they take and fight against the judge or magistrate that they go against, once again, you're not their only client. And they don't need to jeopardize all their clients. But see, that's not the way it's supposed to go. But their first oath is to the bar.
I mean, sometimes you have to laugh or you'll cry because it's just that ridiculous.
So the Ninth Amendment says that your constitutional rights must be applied basically at all time. All time. In other words, they even had a ruling after the jabby jab and the C-19 lockdowns that even then they didn't have the right to lock people down and to freely move and all this. Why? Because the constitutional rights do not go away or cannot be compromised under any circumstance until this country falls.
No, you're supposed to have the freedom of choice within the boundaries of
First Amendment. Second Amendment, whether you choose or not to exercise them is truly up to you. So once again, guys, this is saying it's retained by we the people. Why? Because we the people are the government. You get this, so many people get so much wrong with, we the people, and thinking they, turn around like we're slaves to masters. We're not, even though that's the mentality these have. But that's where you got to know where to fight and hold them accountable and go through it. Yes, it is a process, but I guarantee you, it's just like this. This is what it comes down to. I don't think that worked too good. Let's try this one. Nope. Okay. Switch it.
What are you trying?
I don't know. I'm playing with it.
Yeah.
We're learning some things. Let's go back to this. What we're talking about is until you hold them accountable and you know how to fight, that's what they fear is an educate. Why? Because the first time you put them in place and take it to the federal courts and you whip their ass, whether they like it or not, and you chew them and drain their pocketbooks and get a bunch of people fired and can never work. And understanding this, when you go through this, especially with children in CPS cases, remember to make, a lot of those cases, especially with us, these are crimes against children also.
They really are.
So you have to articulate that in some of your filings, because if that's the case, they can no longer be around children, including their own. Now you flip the tables.
But if you think about it, that's kind of part of the game, right? Because they come in under the banner of protecting children.
Mm-hmm.
So then the focus is on them protecting children, and then it makes the parents into the bad guys, but then nobody looks at what they're doing to the kids.
Nope.
And all the rights of the children that are being violated during this process.
Because the state has told them they can. No state has the right to waive any of we the people's constitutional rights at any time. It is an act of treason and sedition.
And a lot of our children are too young to be able to articulate any of this yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, in a sense, they're vulnerable to it, and they're not going to be able to stand up for themselves when this happens. So it's really up to us parents to be able to do that. So if we don't know and we can't articulate it, then we got a problem.
So let's move on to let's do this, and we're going to do this show just a little bit more. This is the 10th Amendment, and we'll go down some of this because there's some rabbit holes we can go down. The rights reserved to states or people. Now, this is what the Constitution says. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, okay, nor prohibited by it to the states. In other words, under the Constitution, it's saying they can't have it, are reserved to the states respectively. In other words, you get all the crumbs, but these are the things we have power over. In other words, it's talking about the authority of the federal government and going there. In other words, in what the federal government, we the people don't give them power to do, those take and belong still to us. Okay, you got to understand those personal rights. That's right. That's why when you take and waive a right to, and there's the other thing, and we covered this earlier in one of our earlier shows. And if you guys have missed any of these shows on the constitutional rights, you can go to our YouTube channel at Gunning for CPS and go back and look through the past couple weeks shows. I believe this is about episode 4 or 5. We're dealing with this. That you can go back and watch those on each one. That way you can get a better understanding of your constitutional rights and show these and explain them to your children. But what they're talking about is those are not to it by the states. Those are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. The state does not give this. In other words, states can't make laws. They make codes and statutes. They can't, because that power is exclusively given to Congress. And that's part of being part of the United States, saying we all 50 states agree to these are our laws of the land, and they are meant to restrain those serving in the government as elected and appointed officials and actors, not we the people. This is to hold them back. In other words, the things that the states are doing, we have rights. And it says right here, you're not delegated those. Right there, those powers are there. What do they have the power over? Commercial. The only thing the states have power over is the thing of commerce. That's all the rights the states were ever given was under commerce. Okay? And to bring in, once again, to deal with things when there's constitutional rights violations. They're supposed to go before you're even arrested. And we went through that before, to where they say, they read your rights and it says, and attorneys. That's not even in the Constitution. If you go back and see our previous show, it says counsel. That doesn't mean a licensed attorney. They have changed the wording. Remember, I've been telling you guys, this is why you need to go back and read the original documents and understand what it says and what it means. A counsel or counselor can be anybody of your choosing, not a licensed attorney. They are promoting business for the Bar Association. 100%. And that's not legal. That is, in other words, when they ask you, you read your rights? No, I wasn't. Well, you said attorney, not counsel. And under the Constitution, well, now we have to go to the federal courts now. Why? We have to get this question answered on what the definition of it. How you interpret it, it doesn't matter how you interpret it. It's what the Constitution says. It says counsel. What is counsel determined as? It could be your preacher, your rabbi, your mentor, to counsel you, to give you good instruction and or information. This is why the whole thing, especially with some of the people going through the stuff of practicing law without a license. Well, what law? Because under common law, I have the right because I'm a counselor. See, there's two different things. So if I'm practicing law under common law and under the Constitution, that's not practicing without a license, because I'm not dealing with statutes and codes under state. Big difference, but until you can articulate that and defend your position, because once again, the judge is supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to know the law. And if they don't, once again, that's, then that shows that they shouldn't even be serving in that position. But you have got to learn to file your complaints, making them very specific, and either quoting not just case law, but by these definitions and everything else that has gone throughout time. And it's been very clear. You guys realize there is stuff on the books from like the 1800s that has never been overturned. It still holds. And they can't overlook it. We had a more recent ruling. It doesn't matter. This one still stands true. And if you've got a ruling that contradicts that, then yours is null and void because mine's older and mine has more precedence because it's been on the books for so long. That's where it comes in. But you got to know to play the game. They said, well, this is too complicated. The law is not complicated. It's very, very simple. And they overcomplicate it. Well, you don't have this and this, and you got to have this format. You got to have this and that. Listen, when you write something or you do anything, even if you publish a book, they're going to say, I want it double space. I want it in this. It has to be within these. It's just a parameter.
It's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. So what this is saying, in other words, the states don't have the rights to overrule the Constitution because the Constitution, by the 10th Amendment, guarantees me these things. And nothing, the Constitution is saying this is to restrain those elected appointed officials, not only on the federal level, but on the state level. It says it right here. So when they overstep that, they overstep the 10th Amendment. And then you have to define what it says or how it works in your own personal case to turn around. And like I said, that's how you claim the violation, is you have to articulate how it was broken. But the mental health side of this is the reason these are put in place is because it gives us a sense of safety and protection under the Constitution.
We're supposed to have that, yeah.
But we also got to know that there's got to be a way to make our petitions and everything else made, which the Constitution guarantees we're allowed to do.
Correct.
But we're in the wrong courts.
We shouldn't be in the wrong courts. All the courts should be, but the way things are set up now, we're in the wrong courts.
Well, and that's being corrected. Why? Because of lawsuits like mine and yours that is going to end this, expose it, and when it's exposed, then you have that case law that then you can go back, that if they go back to your governor and make him aware of your case and the ruling, or the lawmaker saying, hey, you must do this, or you get the judge to forcibly do it by a court order, because if not, if they won't comply, well, it's very clear. I believe our, elected president says, if you won't do it, I'll do it. Because that's what the federal government is supposed to be doing. Right. When the states don't behave, they have the right to come in and even declare martial law and wipe out all leadership, not just state, local.
Well, I think there's an extremely large misconception right now. I mean, we the people are the government. This is our governing body of elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
Then the elected officials appoint other officials. But the only difference, I've been saying this to people a lot lately, the only difference between us and them is a piece of paper and their employer.
Funny, but it also
that
says...
for a minute. The only thing that's different between us is a piece of paper and their employer. If I worked for the state, it would be their kids that were being taken.
Yeah.
So what is that? Like, that's ridiculous.
And there's the other thing. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. So you caseworkers that are watching this, you will be held accountable, even though you're just taking orders. Doesn't work. Because now you're called a co-conspirator.
Unfortunately.
Especially with the high crimes of treason and sedition. And they go, oh, well, this ain't gonna. Oh, yeah, it's coming. And they know it's coming. Why? Because they opened up the door with the trafficking of children under the Biden administration, not just with, the illegals, children that were here and this and that, but now they're opening the door that if it's just not just the illegal children, it's also the American children that are in these same homes and these same foster homes, that the same things are happening.
And I wish more and more people would understand this, because there's no child that's immune to this unless their parent works for the government.
Well, then, listen,
really?
listen, and that's not always true, because there are people that I have, with sources, have talked to that went to CPS, realized what was going on, actually reported trafficking, and so on and so forth, and they were told to be quiet and keep their mouths shut.
Yeah.
And when they quit, CPS then turned on them and took their children.
Yeah, but they no longer worked for them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's no level of protection there anymore.
But see, that's kind of like, I know a crime that you've done, and now you're indebted to me because, and that's no different than what they considered illegal crime families. to take and do that. If I've got you on a murder and I know where the bodies are, now you're implicated in that. Now you're just as guilty as I am.
Yeah. So
And that's how this
part
goes.
of the manipulation.
Exactly. So, a lot of you guys, you just got to take and figure it out. That's just kind of like what's going on. And, you guys have got, knowledge is power. And there's so much knowledge flowing now, especially with the internet, especially with social media platforms, which is why they want to control a lot of this stuff, because now there's so much influx of information on top of entertainment that now you have a college degree and everything. You don't even have to go to a college anymore. You can go to this or that and do it from home, and the cost is a lot less. And this is a lot less. And you don't need it. But at the same time, why do you need a piece of paper when you know it? And then once again, you deal with the money systems and everything else. What happened to good old-fashioned trading? Hey, I'm good at this and you're good at that, and you've got chickens and I've got honey. Let's do some swapping, and let's equal this out. And you hook me up, I'll hook you up, and make sure that you're taken care of year round, and I'm here. We don't need money then. Then there's no tracking of anything, and then there's no taxes involved. When you go to the grocery store, you have all these taxes. You wouldn't have to pay all that. You're overpaying. Plus, you're paying for a middleman.
We pay taxes like 6 times over by the time we're done anyway.
Yeah, income tax, property tax, sales tax, all these different things. But once again, these are commercial. You realize if you did trading in a private aspect, especially with farmers, and if you guys are farmers and you guys are out there and know farmers and they're looking to get into that, don't get caught up in the thing of just going out there and selling. Learn what a farm share is. Guys, listen. Why? Because technically then your people that are part of your farm share own the things and the things that come out of it. There are ways around this, but no, they're not going to tell you that, because it turns around and it catches them up. If they come to your farm and say, hey, you're selling to people that are out here, well, I'm sorry, they're part of my farm share. They own a section of everything else. I just had the land. I don't own the animals. Technically, all these people own the animals. And then you can use the profits that you roll over to maintain, feed, and everything else. I get compensated for what they pay for. It's for the butchering and the care and the nurture and the land, everything they can't do. But farmers haven't learned that. Why? Because they're so used to going to market with everything they have. But now with the internet,
we can actually eliminate a lot of the middlemen.
Oh, yeah.
If we really try hard enough.
If you wanted to go to the store, you could go to, somebody would design a website of all these things. And some of these things are coming out with people that do this year round, between honey, bread makers, so on and so forth, groceries, vegetables, even from California. They will ship this stuff to you. And it's funny, it's not as everybody says, well, your fruit and your vegetables look funny. It's like, no, that's just a different strain of, and they call it ugly vegetables and ugly this and that. It's like, it's just like eggs.
Nothing comes out of the ground looking perfect.
No.
They do you know how much food they throw away because they have to pick the most perfect apple or the most perfect pepper to put on the shelves in the grocery store to make it look pretty? If you knew, it would be mind-boggling. There's so much food waste.
You know what my favorite thing is that I learned, especially being up from the Chicagoland area, is being close to Wisconsin and learning about cheese. The cheese heads. Now, guys, you'll understand this, because I see a lot of people, when you have real cheese, not processed crap, okay? Cheese, oh, well, throw it away, it's moldy. No, cut it off. The rest of it's still good. It won't get past the outer layer.
How do you think cheese is made, people?
How do you think cheddar's made? Now,
let's think about
there's some other things out there that you do take, and they make cheese wheels, as a lot of you will take and notice in this and that they'll wrap it or they'll dip it in wax. Same thing they do with like Maker's Mark or some of the other whiskeys. Garrison Brothers said they will seal the barrels or anything, or put it in there. If you don't believe me, what's that one that has all the red, that Baby Bells?
Yes.
So they put that, they individually do that, and then they put it in a wax content. So think about that for a minute, that that we are throwing away and so wasteful for food, even our clothing. Everybody, she had said something about, well, now, I don't understand why everybody goes and buys new clothing, because we don't need that much, and how much waste. And even when they were taking it to other countries that quit sending it because it just ends up in the ditches. We have so much clothing that's not an issue. I mean, if you look at third world countries, yeah, they're wearing Nike, they're wearing Adidas, they're wearing Tommy, they're wearing all sorts of this stuff. It's just free.
We throw it away.
We throw it away. It's a waste because we don't wear our clothes till they're absolutely destroyed. And then after you get to a certain point, because we're so wasteful, we're not taught to this. We have instant gratification. We want it now.
We've lost a lot of skills too.
Oh, a ton, which is why they tried to kill off the older generation, guys. They didn't want us to learn those skill sets, those things. That's why they put you in public schools, because you don't learn those family traits and traditions of how to do this and how to do that.
That's not the only thing. Now consider this and just think about this with me for a minute. CPS takes a child away from their family, puts them in foster care. They have no connection to their biological family until they're 18, if they're even able to find them. Now that person has no connection to their roots, their DNA, their birthright, nothing.
Their heritage, yeah.
No heritage, right? So
their bloodline.
They've lost everything that their family could have taught them, potentially.
Which is a constitutional rights violation because there's no crime.
But then, this poor young person who has aged out of the system now has a child, and CPS comes knocking again, and now that child gets taken.
We've seen that.
That's like double the removal.
Yeah,
from
even if you've aged out,
family.
You know how many times I've heard of people that have aged out, even, they're 20, 30 years old, and they were raised in foster care and this and that, and all of a sudden, because their name is now in the system, that now they'll go after their children.
They come to me all the time. I know some of you are in the audience right now. I know you. And so now you've been removed from your family. You have no connection, no heritage, no nothing to stand on, for better or for worse. And then now your child is taken and they're removed from you. So that's like double removal from family heritage.
Yeah. Now they can reprogram you.
Your family, your grandparents, your parents, whomever, anything they could have potentially taught you is gone.
And here's the sad part that's so messed up, because I've talked to some of the different foster parents, especially some of them that are just completely unaware of what's going on. Do you realize that they could take in 1 or 2 kids and never have to work a day in their life and just take care of those kids, send them off to school, do the things, and it's all paid for? But you and I have to bust our ass so hard to just survive and do this and to do that and all those other different things that just kills you. And like, well, I could sure use that money of, $5,000 to $7,000 in free, medical care and free this and free that and all these other things. But now let's go down let's go down the medical care thing, because that's a big thing. They make sure that they go into immunizations. But now that what's been revealed by RFK with all these immunizations of the risks and all that information, you realize, I think a lot of people don't realize that now when you go down and you pull those records and you didn't agree to those, you now technically would have a lawsuit against CPS in the state for co-conspirators to poisoning and or destructing your kids or opening them up to being harmed right there, because what we just did, what was available. No, they didn't. They covered it up because it's more money.
The medical system is yet another system
broken,
that's interconnected and broken. If you knew and understood how many people within the medical system are silenced or sent elsewhere with their research, or just plain blackballed because it doesn't fit the narrative, you would be shocked.
Cure for cancer, cure for autism,
You would be
cure
shocked.
for this, cure for this, cure for that. But that's a multi-billion trillion dollar industry.
It is.
That it would do it, but people would be healthy and clear, and then you wouldn't have to worry. What that goes into the concept of depopulation and too many people and all these other things. That these are other people's ideals that they are forcing upon us. The fact that they're doing that is there. But once again, and that goes back into CPS for, well, that's medical neglect. Well, my choice on whether or not I'm doing this for you to prove or this or that, they got to be dying, but at the same time, there's been so many people that my child was taken, let alone they had a birth defect. It was found out later, but my child was never returned.
I've heard that one a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rose, it is exhausting, and they want you exhausted because they want you quiet, and they want you complacent, and they want you to comply. And it's when we buck up and we try to fight back when they just come at us so hard.
But see, if the truth is revealed with all this and all these people don't have a job and there's no use for them, what does that mean? Taxes go down.
I think that it's a fallacy to think that we need them. We don't.
We don't. We don't. There's no need for them. There's absolutely none.
They've basically taken our place.
Yeah.
They're doing the job we are supposed to be doing.
If there is a crime, and let me make this clear, there is truly a crime of abusing a child. Truly a crime. That is what your sheriff's department is designed for, is to investigate crimes.
Correct.
Other than that, leave us the hell alone. That's our constitutional right, to be left alone. For you to invade yourselves in our lives, our homes, and everything else. And here's the problem. It's coming down. It's all coming down. And all these people, and you're seeing advertisements now, especially I think the more recent one I've seen on Facebook and this and that is some of these community colleges and everything else doing social worker programs. But you know what the funny thing and the ironic thing is it's Muslim based.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that kind of really bothers me, because if once again, that you could say, well, freedom of religion, so I say, well, great. But there are the concept of some of these people, and if you look at what's going on up in Dearborn, Michigan, and some of the other places that are there, their ideology is to overthrow us and remove our Constitution. That there is enough, and that's one thing I don't understand, for them to start doing that, let alone that come out of their mouth. That's automatic deportation. Right. You're going back to your country because we won't have it. But we don't have people that, why? Because it's votes and it's people that want to do this and that. But now a lot of that is going to change. And I think we're going to see it continue to change, because other countries have had enough of this. And if you guys look at some of my posts that we try to do things internationally, especially with Ireland and Scotland, England, Australia, all this, they've had it. Poland, a lot of European countries, get them the hell out of here. I mean, this whole thing, they're done. The people are done, even to the point they're in the streets saying, these are our streets.
So can I just say this, since we were kind of sort of talking about it? Okay, so when we say crime, I'm just going to put this out there because I've heard this so many times over. But you have rights, your children have rights, your exes have rights. Yeah. Just because you're mad at your ex or they're not giving you what you want doesn't mean that's an excuse to call CPS and weaponize the system against your ex.
No. And that's going to change. There's a lot of states that are changing that too, and there's stuff on the books coming that if you do, what ends up happening, it will backfire on you, and you will lose complete custody of your children because of that.
I mean, it's not right now, but
the point is that is coming. They are aware of the abuse of the system, so now they're going to revert it back. That if you do that and found it's unfounded, you've made false allegations to do this stuff, you will be held accountable. And the one thing you will do is lose your children automatically. Guys, it's just this simple. Be a fucking adult.
Right. If
Grow
you
the
can't
hell up.
agree, that's fine. At least agree where the children are concerned. They have a right to access both parents, as long as nobody's being harmed.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear. As long as nobody is actually being physically harmed, they have right to access to both parents.
And just because you feel that this meets a certain definition, there is a legal definition for abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, this and that. And the other thing is kids are going to be kids. They're going to get out there. They're going to get cuts and scrapes and bruises. They're going to overhear things. But your best, once again, your job as a parent is to guide your children into a life to deal with these situations, so on and so forth, to be able to do things on themselves. You don't expect a 13-year-old to act like a 6-year-old unless there's actually some brain or developmental type thing. In other words, you expect them to act appropriately for their age and to learn, retain, and be able to apply knowledge to a certain aspect.
But also, kids are smarter and more capable than
people
ever give them credit for.
And they're more curious too. That's the big thing that they want to take out, is the curiosity.
But my point is even if their situation isn't ideal,
right,
they find ways to survive regardless.
And the other thing is too,
they're very good at
even if you live in the city, I'm going to give you this piece of advice. Take your kids to a farm. Spend time at farms or this and things out in nature and so on and so on. Why?
Just
and
don't
here's
tell your
why.
therapist. They might think it's excessive.
Well, and once again, and this is why.
That happened
because
to me.
you're going to see the animal kingdom do what the animal kingdom does. And there's a whole lot less explanation, because then it realizes you're animals, and there's less discussion later of some of those things. And they're going to go through that natural thing. And for some people, oh, that's weird. But I've actually, there's been cases to where I've heard them laugh at court from an old country judge, to where, you had a CPS worker that was from the city. They're like, oh, they're watching they're letting their children watch animals have sex and this. They're like, we're not letting them do anything. This just naturally happens on the farm.
I mean, kids can watch National Geographic. What's the difference?
I mean, and this gets them the understanding of how animals do different things. And guess what? You're teaching them biology. You're teaching them, several different part of the sciences. They need to be learning in a classroom anyway. I mean, if that's so disgusting, why are you cutting open frogs and other things, in high schools, or dissecting other things to understanding in the sexuality of this and that? And then there's less things for gender dysphoria and mass confusion that that other show was talking about.
Nature is nature.
Nature is nature, and there's anomalies. But the other thing we have to take into consideration with being educated is what we've been fed in our food, and how that has changed our body chemistry, our hormones, and our brain chemistry, that will actually cause. I mean, guys, that you're talking about. A lot of people say postpartum depression, this and that. Do you realize that there's studies going on now that say that you can eliminate all that just by the proper diet, because you're not getting the right foods? Yep. Whoa.
So actually, there is a person, his name is Dr. Gurian, and he has done studies on the differences between male and female brains for over 30 years. He has some books out there. Mm-hmm. And I went to a couple of his seminars, and he even said, like, our food,
you are what you eat.
No, well, so there's in our fertilizers, there's estrogen in our fertilizers, and so our non-organic fertilizers that our plants are growing up in, there's high levels of estrogen. We have a ton of soy in our food.
Oh,
we
soy?
have a ton of there's a couple other things.
Well, remember we talked about
estrogen qualities.
That part of the soy plant that it will actually take, that they do, because they'll throw in the whole plant instead of separating and trimming just the leaf or just this and that. That part of the plant will actually turn men more feminine.
So
with soy, that
was my point. Is he said it's in our diet that it actually changes the chemistry in little boys' brains. Like, this stuff is like, it's important to know. Mm-hmm. When you start going down these rabbit holes, you'll learn a lot.
Let alone the dyes in the food that was connected with autism, ADHD, several of these other mental health disorders, and understand this too.
Food dyes are petroleum-based.
Petroleum-based.
They're not even natural food.
And one person, I think I was telling you that about that. They asked a very well-known and long-practicing psychiatrist, "How many people have you cured?" And he goes, "None. Nor will anybody that deals with psychology or psychiatrists, because they don't do that. We simply give them, if it's done right, the tools." For them to heal themselves, and it's up to them.
Curing, it's about healing. Yeah. There's a difference.
And that's the miss thing that I think CPS goes, that we need to do this. We do. Listen, we've all gone through traumas. If you don't believe, I'm Gen X. Listen, you talk about some traumas, some shit, and that we drank out the garden hose. We did that. We had all sorts of crazy shit that went on, but we still survived, and it made us who we are. We are meant to be overcomers and to be resilient and to go through instances. Life is going to be rough, and there's no way out of it. All you can do is prepare for them. It's just like saying, never let your kid ride your bike. Why? Because you're afraid they're going to get hurt or this, that. And then they went on with pads and all these other things. I'm like, hell no, we didn't have pads. We didn't have helmets. When we were daredevils, and we come home with scraped knees and gravel we're picking out and stuff and this, that. But we learned some things not to do that stuff again. We learned what not to do. That's like turning around that remember that one that was doing I think it was around TikTok for the last time, with the parent that had the hot pan off the thing, grab it, what is it? Grab it on the side because the bottom's hot, something like, the bottom's,
we all have
the bottom's hot.
We all have a kid who we had to repeat this over and over and over, and they still stick their hands
until the parents turn around. The motherfucking bottom is hot.
I mean, kids will learn the hard way sometimes.
And they're going to learn those things. And the idea is sometimes you've got to let them learn those small lessons when they're kids, because sometimes it's the only way they're going to learn, because not everybody is auditory learners.
Oh no, there's at least 5 recorded different ways of learning, and typically people use multiple. So there's no one way, and our education system is very much one way.
Yeah, which is not that one size fits all, does not work, which is why it's a failing system, and we are failing internationally. Internationally, we are falling off. Do you realize before public education system even came into being, we had a better education system, and our children were able to read and write and this, that? Why? Because they were doing it at home.
Yeah, well, if you went down the history of how public education system came to be, it's not pretty.
Well, what about our teachers? What about this? If you feel you're that good and you decide you want to work in that, then private contract with that. Eliminate it, take it, give your choice back. Less on my taxes and give me more to spend. Oh, the power comes back to me. Yeah, the choice isn't made for you. But once again, that was the point of putting everybody back into work, both sexes into work, and destroying the family home was to do what? Put your kids in school. Now they got your kids. But at the same time, what's that mean? More money for them to spend. To do what? As elected appointed officials, there's the other problem. They shouldn't be sitting on these things for a lifetime because they're crooks. How can you become millionaires and some of them billionaires serving our country? That is just so wrong. You're public servants. If you're doing that, then you're a crook. And that's what's coming out, is they're finding out that these people are crooks and they are breaking the law. And they're going to hold them accountable. They even told people that were there on January 6th to open it up for Nancy Pelosi, that she was a major part of it, that you can now sue Nancy Pelosi for being, if you got in trouble during the January 6th thing, you can go after her civilly. That was already determined by a federal court. And of course, they're going to kick and have a damn thing. But once again, you talk about redistribution of wealth and some of the other things. How about you just get your hand out of my damn pocket and leave me alone and let me choose? But once again, they believe the population, for most of them, are too stupid to do that. Well, you know who created the stupid, the people that you consider stupid or uneducated? You did, because you failed to educate.
Purposefully.
Oh.
Purposefully.
Wow, look at that. Yeah, it makes a little bit better sense, doesn't it? But it's just crazy the amount of stuff that goes on. Well, guys, we're going to wrap up this week. Catch us again next week at 9:30. Same bat time, same bat channel. Whoops, lost the thing there. Technical difficulties. So check us out next week. Sorry about that, guys. Check us out next week, same time, every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on the Gunning 4, the number 4 CPS channel, where you can take and interact with us, talk to us, this and that. That's the best way to do it. We do get some of the Facebook and this and that. It does have that. Don't forget about tomorrow night to check out Sharon on her show, Beauty for Ashes. She's got more guests and so on and so forth. Yeah, Beauty and Ashes, and it's going to be at 9:30. She's at 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. She's a half hour earlier, Eastern Standard Time, every Monday night. More special guests that are coming on. Great topics, great discussions. Guys, check us out next week. We'll pick up where we left off. We may do a quick recap. We'll give you everything else through there, what we've gone through, and then we're going to wrap it all together, probably with one big show as a recap. But we'll pick up next week on the 11th Amendment. But the first 10 are known as your Constitution and or your civil rights of the amendments of the Constitution. But join us again there. Don't forget Tiff and the Punisher tomorrow around 7:30. Don't forget to go to our YouTube page, both of them, or all of them, and like the individual pages, or the CPS Breaking News Network channel that's there. And like and follow those pages where you can get notifications. Well, half the time, I've been getting notifications, but you should too, as well as through your email, saying that we're live and things are coming up. But don't forget to go and like those shows. Don't forget to check out Sharon on Beauty and Ashes on TikTok. And don't forget to check out Gunning for CPS on Facebook, the news channel that's there, and a lot of stuff that's going on there, as well as, I have my personal page, Gunner Evers. You can go through there. More to come. We're going to be working on this week, like I said, the amended versions for our federal filing. So there's a lot of work that needs to get done. But once again, our team is coming together, and that's what we're working on this week. So guys, be safe, be careful, know your rights, educate others, protect your children, and teach them their rights, especially their Fourth and Fifth Amendment. You have a right. I have a right not to talk to you, and I'm not going to talk to you, and there's nothing you can do. But catch us again next week. Thanks again, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.